Thank you for joining us on this public presentation for the Muskego Yard Freight Bypass project. I'm Arun Rao, the Passenger Rail Manager for Wisconsin DOT, and I'm joined by Karen Closer, Project Manager for HNTB, and Aaron Bovey, Engineering Design Lead from HNTB. The purpose of this presentation is to present project design concepts for the Muskego Yard Freight Bypass project. The agenda for our presentation today is project background, existing and proposed operations, project features and right-of-way, environmental review, and schedule and next steps. First, a brief overview and some background on this project. The Muskego Yard Freight Bypass project improves freight operations in the yard and safety in the Milwaukee Intermodal Station by creating a new double-track main line for freight trains through CP Rail's Muskego Yard, which is located just to the south and west of the Milwaukee Intermodal Station. This will allow freight trains to bypass the station. The Muskego Yard Freight Rail Bypass project is one of the infrastructure projects needed to prepare the corridor for additional Amtrak Hiawatha service round trips between Milwaukee and Chicago. The Hiawatha is one of the busiest Amtrak routes in the nation and the busiest route in the Midwest, setting a record in 2019 of more than 880,000 passengers. This service is critical to the economic growth and recovery in the region, and the Hiawatha also provides connections to 7 other Amtrak Midwest regional services. The need for passenger rail growth in this corridor has long been identified and incorporated into the state's long-range plans. So WisDOT has been working with Canadian Pacific Rail to identify improvements needed to expand passenger service, and one of those projects is the Muskego Yard. The improvements are needed to avoid or minimize traffic conflicts between passenger and freight traffic when additional passenger traffic is added. WisDOT has been coordinating with CP Rail since 2010 on this project. Currently, we are completing the FRA environmental clearance and preliminary design. To advance the project towards implementation, WisDOT applied for an FRA competitive discretionary grant for final design and construction late last year, and happily we were selected for award for the project in March of this year. And that's $26.6 million in federal funds with matching funds from the Wisconsin DOT and Amtrak. With that, I will turn it over to our project managers from WisDOT's consultant, HNTB, to provide more details, starting with Karen Closer.
And to build on Arun's introduction, I'll give a broad overview of the project and outcomes, and Aaron will follow up with a little more information on the project features. The project limits extend from just north of the KK River Bridge, or Kinnickinnic River, on the CP main line and extends through the Muskego Yard area to connect back into the existing CP main line tracks just west of the 35th Street Bridge. So to move freight traffic out of the intermodal station, the project creates a double-track main line through Muskego Yard, which requires work on the CP main line entering and exiting the yard from the east and the west. The new track configuration will include installing new signal systems to improve operational efficiency in the yard, as well as at the intermodal station. And then finally, the project will rehabilitate and replace bridges to accommodate the new infrastructure. The basic purpose of the project is to improve the efficiency of the freight rail traffic to allow freight trains to move through Muskego Yard more efficiently instead of traveling through the intermodal station. And while daily freight traffic varies, it's estimated that improvements to Muskego Yard will allow up to 11 daily freight trains to bypass the intermodal station. Key outcomes for the freight rail service include reduced freight travel times with improved infrastructure and signalization. The flexibility of yard operations are improved to allow through freight train movements and improved yard access at the east and west ends of the yard, which avoids freight and passenger traffic delays. On the passenger rail service side of the ledger, moving freight traffic out of the intermodal station frees up capacity for existing passenger rail service, but more importantly, provides an opportunity to increase Hiawatha service in the future with additional round trips. An added benefit is reducing the travel time delays for vehicles at train crossing closures at Greaves Street, 13th Street, and the 2nd Street and Plankinton Street crossings. Aaron is going to talk a little bit more about the details of existing train operations and improvements.
So on the screen today, we show the existing train operations as they operate now. We show the primary freight route highlighted on the northern part, going across the 3 at-grade crossings we discussed, Greaves Street, 13th Street, and 2nd Street, as well as through the Milwaukee Intermodal Station. Just south of there, we show the existing Muskego Yard track layout and overall size of the yard. As you can see, they connect on both the west and east ends at CP Cutoff and CPKK Bridge. The existing Muskego Yard operations has switching movements on the west end by CP Cutoff, as well as switching operations on the east end by Burnham Canal, depending on the direction of the trains traveling through the Milwaukee terminal area. The existing through trains use the primary route as highlighted on the north, bypassing any of those switching operations in Muskego. So the Muskego Yard Bypass project proposed train operations will look at creating that new primary freight route through the Muskego Yard. The secondary route will be maintained through the Milwaukee Intermodal Station, but it will be primarily used for when there's maintenance through on the primary route or for other unknown reasons during operations. This will free up the existing delays at the at-grade crossings for 13th Street and 2nd Street specifically, which are main thoroughways into the Menominee Valley. As we show the highlighted primary route, you can see that the new primary route conflicts with the existing yard operations and switching movements on the west and east end. And in the follow-on slides, we'll show how those proposed project features will mitigate those conflicts. So the Muskego Yard Bypass project is separated into 3 primary features: track, signals, and structures. On the slide here, we show the proposed track work associated in a schematic format. As you can see, the proposed red line work is concentrated on those conflict points at the west and east ends to mitigate the through movements of train operations with the switching movements that are existing today, as well as creating additional signal or control points at various points along the yard. The second bucket of work will be the signals work. So today the existing condition is a manual controlled operation at Muskego Yard. This needs to be upgraded to a centralized traffic control system or a CTC network that allows for a remote control dispatcher or a dispatcher sitting somewhere else on the network to control all the train movements through the Milwaukee terminal area. This will allow for higher track occupancy and additional moves to be happening simultaneously through the yard. It also allows for higher speeds. What we show on the slide here is just 2 examples of signal infrastructure. On the left is a staff signal adjacent to a mainline track and a cantilever signal being installed adjacent to a mainline track. The third scope of work that would be happening as part of the project is related to the proposed structures. There are 6 structures along the corridor. There are 2 to be replaced at Menominee River and Burnham Canal. There's a removal of an existing bridge at the alley due to its not needing to cross the CP railway tracks any longer. And the third scope of work is related to rehabilitating the bridges on the east end of the yard at 2nd, 1st, and Florida Street. These bridges were identified for replacement, removal, or rehab based on the track capacity required additional track infrastructure, and those bridges need to be widened or expanded. They were identified for replacement. The rehab bridges on the east end at 2nd, 1st, and Florida Street are adequately sized to handle the proposed track work that's there, but they are being rehabilitated to bring up the current safety standards related to walkways and handrails, as well as to accommodate the new operating conditions with the increase in trains, as well as the increase in operating speeds. The last item I'll talk about today is the anticipated right-of-way impacts. This is focused between the Burnham Canal and the 3rd Street area. We show there's 2 types of impacts. There's temporary impacts along the northern side of the corridor. This is to accommodate the grading for the additional track work, as well as the temporary track work associated with the replacement of the Burnham Canal and the removal of that structure. And on the south side of the corridor, we show an acquisition, a narrow acquisition, to allow for the new operations of the trains, maintaining those operating envelopes through that corridor. And with that, I'll turn it back to Karen for the environmental review.
So along with developing the preliminary engineering for the project, HNTB is supporting WisDOT by providing environmental analyses that the Federal Railroad Administration will use to complete its environmental review. Some of the ongoing activities include completing noise and vibration studies, historic or cultural resource studies, reviews of potential environmental contamination through hazardous materials investigations, and social and economic impacts. That information will be used by Federal Railroad Administration to complete its environmental review, which they anticipate completing later this year. Which leads me to this slide that shows the project schedule, wrapping up preliminary engineering and environmental review later this year, prior to final design beginning in 2021. Final design is expected to last a little over 18 months into the year 2022, and construction extending from the year 2022 through 2023. So summing up, the next steps from here will be continuing coordination with CP Rail on design details to complete preliminary engineering and the environmental reviews, along with continued coordination with stakeholders in the project, including the City of Milwaukee and property owners, and organizations who'd like to discuss the project design progress and answer questions as the project moves into final design and construction. So this presentation will be available on the project website for public review and comments. And we're asking that if you do have comments on the project, that please submit those by August 7th so we can account for those comments in our environmental review process. And this concludes the presentation portion of the project. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing your comments.